Okay, welcome everyone to our Posh podcast, where we provide a safe place for everyday people to share their stories, and we really try to help people with our podcast. We make it our mission to make your day better, either with humor or with some interesting stories or with something that you can learn. And today I'm very excited to have our two guests on, but first let me introduce my two co-hosts, my daughter Marcella.
Hello.
And my son's girlfriend Whitley.
What's up?
And our technician and DJ Spider.
Adios. Wait.
No, that's
fine. And my name is Gabrielle, and I welcome today our special therapist, Ashley Cook. She's a dual diagnosis specializes in dual diagnosis therapy, and she is going to do a real-time actual therapy session with our guest, our special family guest, Nicolette Pianelli, who is sober from being an addict and has been sober for 20 months. So I'm going to just give it over to the two of you and teach all of us how it is when you go to a therapy session, and how that works and how it is, so everyone can understand.
Okay. So with Nicolette, it's not always the most professional, I would say, but I'm the type of therapist that is very real. I can't, it's just not me to be super stiff and professional all the time. So, and I think that's why we have a good connection too, is because you wouldn't do well with that.
No. But I think, we say that you saved her life. So however you do it, that's your magic way. And I think that's what's amazing.
Yeah, I wouldn't be able to deal with someone that's like strict. I would feel like it's a cold.
Yeah. Well, that was my one, and I think I mentioned this to you a couple of weeks ago, but I have seen so many psychiatrists and so many therapists over probably the past 5 years. And so many times I walked into a doctor's office and I felt like they didn't care. Like they just wanted me to come in, prescribe me some medication and get out. And when I met Ashley and my psychiatrist now, who also works at her office, it felt like I had someone who genuinely cared and who wanted me to like thrive and flourish, and someone who wanted to, instead of like making me just like another number, like I wasn't just another client to them,
right?
You know, like I was someone that they cared about. And like that's why I think was one of the reasons that I did so well in Ashley's setting.
Because it's comforting to right, you feel that way.
Yeah.
Well, excuse me, I had met Nicolette when she was in treatment. I was a therapist at the same treatment center, but I was not her therapist. But all the therapists kind of knew all the clients at the facility. And so I knew of Nicolette, and I would kind of talk to you some, but we really didn't have a relationship at that point. And then her mom had actually approached me, I think it was probably February or March of 2017, right? 2017? Yeah. And she was like, hey, Nicolette's struggling. Will you please take her on? And I was like, yeah, sure. Let's do it. And so she came in, and you know, I immediately felt like she was in the right place, not because of me, but just because she was in the place to change. And I think is what was so significant too, is because, you know, I learned a long time ago, I can't make people do anything.
Yeah.
So they have to be willing. And that was what was so cool about you, is that you were willing from the very beginning. And so we just started slowly, and here we are.
Yeah.
So you just got to the office basically, and you sit down, and then what happens?
So I think we should kind of process through the last 6 months.
Okay.
And what that's looked like for you.
Okay.
So you have always been very good with your recovery program since you started seeing me. You're willing, open-minded, accepting. You were willing to do absolutely whatever it took to be sober. And that was amazing. However, in the last 6 months, I continue to harp on you about, okay, yeah, you've got the recovery thing down. You're sober. I have no doubts about your sobriety. But what I continue to be concerned about with you is that the trauma.
I know. I get very in my head because I'm always like, okay, I like distractions. And
yes, you do.
so I like to put other things in place so I don't have to like try to worry about and focus on myself. And I don't, in the moment, I don't think I'm realizing that I'm doing it. I just do it because I'm like, okay, like I have to focus on something else. So I worry about like, oh, I need to find more sponsees, or oh, I need to go to more H&Is, or oh, I need to help my mom now. And so I like put my self-care off to the side, and then like 4 months down the road, once I'm like a complete nutcase, then I realize like, oh, I haven't been taking care of myself for the past 4 months.
May I just ask what trauma we're talking about?
Just like everything, like my mom and addiction and, you know, toxic relationships. And something that I've learned is that, because I always thought that trauma had to be like some big event that just like happened, you know, and something that I've learned over the past year is that trauma can either be like a big event or it can just be like small little things that happen like over time. Right?
Yeah, and what happened with you, so trauma is defined as it's subjective, it's individualized. So it's any time that your individual emotional threshold gets overthrown. So it to me it could seem, oh, that's not a big deal, but it can be a big deal to Nicolette, and vice versa.
I think that's my problem is I always think, okay, well, yeah, I went through this, but like other people like go through so much more, or like this was so much worse that happened to someone else, so like what happened to me like isn't that big of a deal, you know. And so I push it off to the side and I kind of pretend like it's not that big of a deal, and I'm kind of like my mom in the way that I like compartmentalize everything, and then it ends up coming out like sometimes it can be a couple months or like sometimes a year later, and then I end up having like a full-on mental breakdown. Pretty much is how I work.
Which is why, you know, I continue to harp on you about these things, is because of course you can't see it coming because it's you, right? But I can. And I know you very well now. And so that's why I'm always like, okay, I know I'm being hard on you, but so, you know, what I have processed with you in the last 6 months is that there has been something significant that's happened every single month starting in February. Yeah. So why don't you I want you to connect the dots. Yep.
Okay. Well, January,
what happened in February?
I found out I had Hashimoto's. So
what is Hashimoto's?
It's an autoimmune disease. So my immune system attacks my thyroid when I get like stressed, or if I'm not eating correctly, or if I'm like really run down, overworking myself, whatever, my immune system just continues to attack my thyroid. And so I get really like physically like run down, like I get really lethargic, and I feel sick even though I'm not sick. And so that was like a big realization for me in February to realize that like that's why I had been feeling that way. And so I had to change my diet. And so I started eating AIP. It's the autoimmune protocol diet for autoimmune disorders. And I felt really great for...
Yeah, you were doing amazing.
Like, what, 2 months?
Yeah, I would say March and April, you were rocking it, both with recovery and just your emotional sobriety as well.
Yeah. Yeah. And then I started...
And we were also doing EMDR during that time.
Yeah, and I was okay with it. I wasn't like... I mean, you know, it's never like I'm super psyched to do EMDR. Right. But I wasn't like...
What is that?
It's eye movement desensitization and reprocessing therapy.
Yeah, you talked about that the first time you were on, right? With the lights and stuff.
Yes, yes. And so, it was something that I wanted to do with Nicolette, you know, for a while, but I knew she wasn't ready. And so about a year into your therapy, I was like, I think it's time. Yeah. And you were like, okay, let's do it. Yeah. And then for 2 solid months, we would do one talk therapy session and then an EMDR session. And you were really getting into that. Yeah. Yeah.
And I felt really good. And then I started dating a new guy. And that was in April.
You met him in April, and I think you guys started like getting serious
in
around
May.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we were together like May, June, and July. And then I think that's when things started like slipping.
Yeah, because if you remember, you and I did an EMDR session and it was pretty intense. Do you remember what it was?
Well, we were targeting bullying, weren't we?
And what came out?
Was it my mom?
That. And I can't lead you on this.
I know.
That's the thing about EMDR. I cannot lead her because that could interrupt the process.
Wow.
I think this was the last EMDR session we did, right? Well, I think we started talking about my mom, and I think...
Well, let's start with the target. Where did we target?
We targeted bullying. So we targeted 8th grade.
What was the image?
It was me sitting in the cafeteria with people all around me, but I was like alone by myself at a table. And then there was like other girls that were like my friends, like at the very other end of the table. And so that was like the image that we targeted. And then...
And what was the core belief that came up?
That I
about
wasn't
yourself?
I wasn't good enough.
Right.
And
I'm not worthy.
Yeah. Not good enough, not worthy, unlovable, all that. And I remember when my mom started like peeking in, like her stuff started peeking into the EMDR session. And I think the image of her was the night that she had split her lip open and was laying there bleeding. I think was the image that creeped in for me. And that, I think that's what really started freaking me out. And then that's when I started getting like kind of unstable and like not.
Well, yeah. So you started dissociating in the session. And so what did we do?
We made me go to my safe place, and then we stopped the session for the day, which was not what my other EMDR therapist's MO was.
Right.
Which is the reason I didn't want to do it in the first place, you know? And then we started doing it, and it was I like the way you do it.
Well, that's the way you're supposed to do it.
I know. It's much different. It's better.
Yes, it's very safer. Important that, and Nicolette knows this now, that she's in complete control in EMDR. She can stop at any point, and I will stop it if I start to see her dissociate, which she did, and I caught it. And that the EMDR therapist has to be very mindful and know how to pick up on signs of dissociation. Do you remember what you were doing? The dissociation at all? So your mind went blank, you started to shake, and then you kind of spaced out, like felt really lightheaded.
I remember us ending the session.
So, well, yeah, because I brought you out of it. And so when someone starts to dissociate, we do grounding afterward. That's why I brought you back to your safe place.
Yeah.
Right.
I think my safe place was me reading a book in Hawaii on the balcony when it was raining.
Yep. That sounds about right.
Yeah, it's my safe place.
So after that session, we did grounding. I said, Nicolette, you're going to be very, very raw for a couple of days. I need you to reach out to your support system, which you tried. And what happened? Not
very well.
No, you did. Remember, you reached out to the guy you were dating at the time.
Yeah.
And what did he say to you?
He was not. I think I tried to call him after the session about my mom, and I was just crying and talking about my family, and his advice was kind of, well, I had said something about finding pills, and he said, oh, well, at least you didn't find heroin or needles. And that just like pissed me off because I was like, so why is finding pills or like alcohol any less worse than finding like needles? Like, I don't understand. So we just kind of got into an argument, and I just wanted boyfriend advice. And he kept giving me like sponsor advice and like trying to tie it into the 12 steps in the program. And I just got really angry because I was like, I just need my boyfriend right now. I don't need a sponsor. If I wanted my sponsor, I would have called my sponsor.
Right.
And he just wasn't listening. And so I ended up hanging up on him. And we were just, and then that was kind of like the basis of what our arguments were for like the next 2 months. Really was him just not listening and me trying, and then me feeling stupid for even bringing it up in the first place because I didn't understand why what I was saying was like less important than what he was saying. And I tried to sit there and have a conversation with him one night, and everything I said, he just like had a reason or an excuse as to why like it was wrong. And then I felt stupid for even trying to bring it up in the first place.
So at this point, you regressed emotionally, not in your recovery program, but you regressed emotionally. And why is that?
Well, I think because I tried to reach out, and I tried to, instead of like, because I have a tendency to like close into myself, And instead of doing that, like I tried to reach out, and like the response that I got was pretty much like,
you got shut down.
yeah.
Yeah.
Because it was pretty much like, what you're thinking and what you're saying is stupid.
Yeah.
You know? And so I was just kind of like, okay, well, then I guess I'm not going to think or say any of that again.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
Yep, absolutely. And I think this is important for people to know about trauma too, is that it is extremely hard for anyone with trauma, and particularly you, to be vulnerable.
Mm-hmm.
And so you were doing exactly what you should do, tried to be vulnerable, you tried to reach out, and you got invalidated.
Mm-hmm.
And so at that point, because this is the guy that you're dating, you shut down.
Mm-hmm.
And so when you came back into the next session and we were doing talk therapy and trying to get you to the next EMDR session, you just would not go there.
Yeah. I remember that.
Mm-hmm. And at that point, I even said to you, I said, look, it's your choice. You know, I'm not going to make you do anything, but nor can I. But this guy's not good for you.
I know.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I feel like I get into really good places,
Mm-hmm.
like, and not just with sobriety, but just like life and relationships. Like, I feel like I start getting to like a healthy place with relationships and like knowing my worth and like all this stuff. And then it's like I take 3 steps forward and then like something will happen and I take like 2 steps back, you know? And it's like, I feel like right when we get to like a really great place, I'm always just like expecting something to happen to like make it go bad again.
Which is a trauma response as well.
Yeah.
Always expecting that when things are going good, that it's not
It's
only
not going to
temporary.
last.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I have
And
that too. Oh gosh. I'm like that.
but so we broke up in July, I think, end of July.
What made
And
you finally break up with him?
it was a long process. It was a long story. You want me to be honest?
Sure.
Okay. Yeah. I ended up cheating on him. It was.
But hold on. Hold up. So you and I had processed for what, a month about how to break up with him?
Yeah.
And this goes back to you being non-confrontational.
I was too scared.
I know.
I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I didn't want to hurt his feelings. I was scared. And then I was afraid that all of his friends were going to hate me if I broke up with him. And it was just like this whole and I'm a catastrophizer. We all know that. And I was just like absolutely thinking the worst in my head. And so instead of breaking up with him, I just like continued to let it go on.
But what did I say to you like 2 weeks before that happened? I said, if you don't break up with him and you're not assertive and you set your boundary, you're going to cheat on him.
Yeah, I know.
And she did.
I did.
I think Ashley knows you very well.
Very well. And I did, and which, I mean, it was super shitty of me.
Well, yeah, no, whatever. It is what it is. But I don't care that you cheated on him for him.
Yeah.
I cared because I know that it tears you up
Me
inside
apart,
whenever you hurt someone.
Yeah. Well, and that's the thing too. And this is why I feel crazy, okay? Because I get into these places where I'm like, I could never hurt a fly. Like, I want to save all of the little animal, you know, like I want to be like Mother Mary or whatever. And then I get into these places where I end up cheating on someone or I end up hurting someone. And like, I don't understand how like I got to that point. Because like in my mind, like in my reality, like I would never do that, you know? And
well, yeah, you wouldn't.
Right. And then it's like I get into these points and it reminds me of like who I was in my addiction.
Yep.
It's like those like addictive behaviors come back out.
Absolutely.
You know? And it drives me crazy because then I'm like, and I got to go make an amends and, you know, it's just like a whole process. But
And then it was about, what, a couple of weeks later that Tommy passed.
we broke up like middle of July and then Tommy passed away very beginning of August.
Yeah.
So, and I met with my sponsor like a couple nights ago and me and her just talked for like 2 hours and it was like I had this like revelation that for the past 5 months like I haven't been taking care of myself or like doing good things for myself, and it was like completely obvious to everyone else but like I had no idea. And then I like got to that point and Tommy passed away and I just like had a full blown like meltdown. And then
Which is understandable.
yeah, but then realized like, okay, I hadn't been, because I got sick, like I got laryngitis and then I got a herniated disc and I was just like not like my body was like physically getting run down, like as well as like me mentally. And then that's when I kind of hit the point too where I was like, okay, like I need to move, like I need to go somewhere where it's like safe and I feel safe, and I need to move to my sister's house. And I just kind of I feel like I just need to like restart,
right,
and just kind of start everything over,
which is where you are now. And literally you just came to that revelation like Wednesday.
Yeah, like 2 nights ago. Yeah.
And so, yes, I knew, everyone knew around you, but until you come to that on your own.
Well, because I'm stubborn too. So like you can sit here and tell me as many times as you want, like you're not taking care of yourself. And I'm like, yes, I am. Like, what are you talking about?
Yeah, you're like, I'm going to meetings, I'm working my steps. I'm like, I'm not talking about that.
Well, that's what I learned too. And it's crazy to be 20 months sober and to like be still having these realizations. Because like when I first got sober, like everyone always tells you the drugs and alcohol are not your problem. Like you just because you get rid of the drugs and alcohol does not mean like you're going to be like a healthy person, you know? And so like I've always known that. And like when I've gone to like H&Is and everything, like I've said that, like those words have come out of my mouth, but then like I do like the complete opposite, like with my behaviors. Like I think like, okay, well, like, you know, I was only ever really bitchy like when I was high. So like if I'm not high, like I'm not going to be bitchy. Or like I only like decided like not to go to class because I was like hungover. So like if I'm not hungover, like I'll go to class all the time. And it's like, even though I say like the drugs and alcohol are not your problem, it's like I'll still act like, oh, like all my problem was the drugs and alcohol. So like once I get rid of that, like I'll be a perfectly fine person and I don't even need to bother to work on myself. And then I was talking to my sponsor like 2 nights ago, and we went over that, and like I didn't even realize that that's what I was doing in my head until we talked about it. And I was like, isn't it crazy that like at 20 months sober, like I still have this revelation? Because in my head I'm like, I'm 20 months sober, like I shouldn't be having these thoughts, like I shouldn't be like I just thought at this point that I would be like this amazing like person, you know?
You are an amazing person.
Well,
You're an amazing person.
I didn't think I would still be having like these struggles and like these problems. And like I was scared to talk to people in the program about it because I was like, I'm not supposed to be having these thoughts. I'm over 1.5 years sober. I'm almost 2 years sober. Like I shouldn't feel like this. I shouldn't be like this. And then I talked to my sponsor a few nights ago and she was like, dude, like I'm 4.5 years sober and like I still have these problems. Like all recovered means is that like you don't have an urge or an obsession to drink or use drugs anymore. Right. Like is all recovered means. Like it doesn't mean that you've worked on yourself or you've fixed yourself. And so now we're going through the steps for my emotional sobriety because, and I realize now too that it's just as important as going through the steps like for your drug and alcohol sobriety.
Absolutely.
You know?
Yeah. So, okay. Through this process, though, you know, you made a really good point that your body, so you know that I'm always preaching spiritually, mentally, physically, right? You have to have all three. It's not just the mental, it's not just the spiritual, it has to be all three. And when you don't do all three, what happens?
I fall apart.
Yeah. Especially when you have trauma, right? Because if you can push off your trauma all you want, but it will catch up with you.
And I know it's just so much easier to just like put it in a box for later. But
what happens to your body physically when you're not dealing with the emotional stuff?
I get sick all the time. I get really run down. I get lethargic. I don't like feel good about myself physically. And then I start getting like mentally really fucked up about it. And it's just kind of like a whole cycle.
Which now that you and I both have autoimmune disorders, what have we learned about this?
That it can be brought on by stress and trauma.
Yep.
Great.
Which is why, you know, Hashimoto's in February, right?
Yeah.
And then, you know, you deal with that. You start taking care of your body. You're working through stuff emotionally. You know, spiritually, you're in a good place because of your program. And then, you know, the distraction hits with the guy. You start dating him, and then you put all your focus in the guy and trying to make that relationship work when you knew deep down it was never going to work.
I know.
And so you pushed off the emotions. You pushed off the spiritual aspect, and you had your recovery, and so you just convinced yourself that everything was okay.
Yeah.
But In the meantime, I want to point out that the Hashimoto's, you're back.
Mm-hmm.
How many herniated discs?
I have 1 herniated disc.
Okay. And then you've been sick a lot.
Mm-hmm. I know. I noticed, but that's the thing, is that's what sucks, is I don't realize it until after, like, the avalanche has already crashed. Like, I wish I could I need to start noticing it, like, before the avalanche starts to fall.
Well, or
just prevent the avalanche
listen
from
to
happening.
your therapist when I say, okay, self-care, and you're like, I am. And I'm like, okay, but really? Because if you were, you wouldn't be physically breaking down.
I know. I think I'm doing it in my head. But it's like Juliana will say, like, I think that I ask things, but, like, I don't really, like, ask or say things. And then, like, she'll say something later and I'm like, yeah, I told you. And she's like, no, you didn't. It's like, I thought I did in my head. Like, I feel like I'm taking care of myself in my head, and then I realize that, like, I'm not later on.
Mm-hmm. Would you get frustrated with me because I'm constantly pushing you? And I'm like, well, I care about you. I'm sorry. It's going to happen. You knew that when you signed up for this 2 years ago.
No. I think I just like to, I don't know. I think I just like to push it all off, and I'd rather, like, focus on trying to, like, help other people.
Mm-hmm.
And, like,
which is the definition of?
Fix them. And
which is the definition of what? She loves when I do this to her. Codependency.
I know I'm codependent. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
I know that.
Can I ask you what taking care of yourself, like, what are you referring to? What is she not doing?
Okay, so when in those 2 months when you were doing really well,
Mm-hmm.
she was working out regularly. She was doing the AIP diet. She was going to her meetings, working with her sponsor, talking to me, doing EMDR. So again, she's hitting all 3 components. Physically,
Okay.
she's working out and following a good diet.
Okay.
That's good for her body. B, she's going to her meetings and working with a sponsor, so that's relying on her higher power, so they're spiritually. And then emotionally, she was doing EMDR, so she was actually processing through her trauma and walking through it rather than trying to compartmentalize.
Okay.
And when people are working through their trauma, yes, it sucks and it doesn't feel great, but you're preventing the down the road breakdown.
Avalanche.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And then, when Tommy died, obviously everything had to stand still for a little bit. And I totally understood that. And so since he died, when did he die? First week of August? Yeah. So since that day, we have only done self-care. We haven't tried to do EMDR. Because you're not ready for that yet. And that's fair. I have no problem doing that. But the self-care continued to get pushed back.
I know.
And by self-care, for you, your self-care is working out regularly, having your AIP diet, socializing with safe people, not toxic people.
Sitting in my bedroom alone.
Right. Because I re-listened to your podcast, and at one point you had talked about the depression, and whenever you get depressed, you do what?
I sit in my bedroom alone, and I close the blinds, and I put on Netflix, and I hide under my covers.
Right. And then at the end of your podcast, you said, this is the happiest I've ever been, and I let the sun shine through, and I feel happy again. And then what did you say to me last Friday in our session? I said, what are you going to do this weekend?
So I'm probably just going to stay home in my room and watch Netflix.
And what did I say to you?
Oh, God.
You said no,
No, you're not.
Oh, my
No,
God.
you're not. And why did I say no?
Because that's what I do when I start getting depressed.
And what does that do for you?
It makes my mental state decline.
And then that will throw you into what?
A depression and a
Or a manic episode.
manic episode. Yeah.
And what does it look like when Nicolette gets manic?
You don't want to deal with me when I'm manic.
I'm like, okay. We always laugh about this. So I can tell when you're starting to go into a manic episode because you come in, you sit down on my couch, you literally throw all your stuff down, and you're like, I mean, it is like word vomit. And I literally have to go, hold on, I'm not following anymore. You got to slow down.
Dr. Callaghan met me for the first time.
Yeah, remember she came and got me. She comes and gets me out of my office. I'm like, oh, hell.
She had like 13 pages of notes.
I know. She was like, and she looks at me and she goes, she's manic. I said, yeah, I'm aware. And she was like, well, we got to get her meds because I can't follow her. She's ding, 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 ding. And I was like, I know. I said, because I've been working with her so long, I can follow it somehow.
But see, I can't see it. Everyone else can see it, and I can't.
Well, you're starting to. You pick up on it now.
Yeah.
You even did, and this is, it hasn't been all bad. Like, I know we're talking about, these last 6 months have sucked for you and you stopped with the self-care, but you've had moments, like, for instance, when Tommy died, you stopped sleeping because you were getting manic, understandably so.
I didn't sleep for, I think a week and a half.
Right. But you immediately called me and you called Dr. Callaghan. And you said, I'm not sleeping. I know what this means. I need something to help me sleep so that I don't get more manic.
Yeah.
So you are recognizing the signs. You're just not giving yourself any credit.
I know. I know.
You are so hard on yourself.
I know. I can't help it. I don't know why. I am. Because in my mind, I'm like, and I keep going back to this, but in my mind, I'm like, why, first of all, why am I depressed? Like, there's so many people that have so much else, like, wrong in their lives. Like, how can I,
what do I say to you about that all the time when you say it?
To stop comparing.
What does comparing do?
Nothing.
Nothing. Your trauma is valid because it's valid to you.
I know.
Just because you may not have had this particular trauma is trauma.
I know.
Trauma is trauma is trauma is trauma. You cannot compare them.
I know. I just get into my head about it.
I know.
And then I'm like, okay, but like my life is so perfect. Like I need to be perfect. Like I need to wake up every morning and have a smile on my face and like be perfect, and like hit all these check marks of like being perfect. And then like I go to bed at night and like sometimes like I'm great and then sometimes I'm just like miserable. And I'm like, why am I miserable? Like my life is perfect, Yeah,
I know. But what do I always tell you? What is why do we go through these seasons of life?
Like the changes?
Why do we go through seasons of life where we stop taking care of ourselves and we struggle emotionally?
Because of trauma?
Yeah, because we're human. We're not always going to be on it. And I've told you this a million times. I am in therapy every week too.
I know.
And trust me, there are days when I go in there and she's like, you're not doing what the hell you're supposed to be doing. And she's a fiery redhead too. I love it. And literally it's always funny because I usually meet with my therapist like right before I meet with Nicolette. And so I always come in and I'm like, this is what my therapist told me, and I am going to tell you the same thing. And I think that's also why you and I have connected so well, too, is because I see so much of my younger self in you.
No.
And I'm going to get emotional. I'm trying to save you.
I know.
And I know I can't, and that's my codependency. But I'm trying to get you to prevent you from making the same mistakes I did.
I know. That's what I've been learning too the past few months is how codependent like I am and that I can't save people. Like for 8 years I wanted to save Tommy, and I couldn't do that. And like when he passed, like I fell apart because I thought like I should have been doing more. Yeah. I felt like there was more that I could do to like save him, and so I'm trying to learn that I can't save other people and that like if I can't focus on myself and like make myself better, then like I'm not even going to be able to help other people.
You're absolutely correct.
And so I'm trying to realize like when I'm doing that and when I'm being codependent, like with my dad, like if my mom relapses or anything, I'm so codependent on my dad that I'm so protective over him because I love him so much, and I mean, he's a 60-year-old man. Like he
can take care of himself.
I know.
He did just fine before you were born, dear.
I know. But I'm so codependent on him. I want to like save him. And
that's exactly what he does not want you to do.
I know. And me trying to do that, I'm realizing is just draining me.
Yeah.
And I think that's what I'm distracting myself with because I don't want to have to work like on what I'm going through because I'm like, well, everyone else has problems, so like let me fix their problems first and like then I can try to fix my problems.
Totally. Yeah. Well, and let me tell you, I did that for a long time. That's why I became a therapist to begin with, was because I wanted to help other people. And so I focused on helping everybody else. And in the process, I was breaking down.
Yeah.
And then I started not being effective anymore.
Yeah. That's what I realized too, that the worse I'm doing, like the worse I am at helping people. You know, like when I'm at my best and when I'm doing great, like, and like people, you have to help yourself, like definite, but sometimes people just need like a hand or just like need someone to reach out. And like when I'm doing good and in a good mental space, like I'm good to do that.
Oh, absolutely.
But like,
when you were just full blown Nicolette, like and you're healthy spiritually, emotionally, physically, you're a rock star. You help people and people are attracted to that. But here's the thing for you, and you've heard me say this a million times, you still have a hard time being able to filter out people who are healthy and need help and very toxic people that are just trying to take advantage of you.
I know. I do. Because I just like, I see someone who's like broken and like I want to try to put the pieces back together because like I know how I was a few years ago and like that's miserable. It's so miserable to be in that state of mind. And like instead of thinking like, okay, that person's probably not healthy, like stay away from them, I'm like, come here, you know? And then I invite toxic people into my life.
Right. And there's the difference between people. I love that you try to help people.
I know.
And some people, I totally want you to try to help.
I know.
But there are some people that are acting like they want help.
I know.
And they're really just trying to take advantage of you.
I know.
Like, for instance, that guy who, I'm just going to get pissed, who continued to take money from you.
I know.
I was like, you got to be shitting me. I remember I had you in a session.
Nice.
I know. And I was like, no, you're done. You're going to call him right now. And you tell him he has until this day to pay you back. Remember that?
I know. I was trying to be nice. I know. Stop giving me that look.
It's okay. I just, again, you know that I give you a hard time because you know all of this.
I know.
You know it, but it's the following through.
I know
that you have a hard time with.
I know. Especially when I get into places like these is when like I feel like all of the realizations are very like strong and like I can like see them and like feel them and like right now like I can see specifically over the past few months like that like I wasn't taking very good care of myself and like I was kind of letting other people's problems like overtake mine and I was trying to like put distractions in front of myself so like I didn't have to worry about me. And then like I slowly start to see like the mental decline and the spiritual decline. And like when I was talking to my sponsor the other night, I was like, I know in my head that like I say that my higher power is supposed to control everything, but it's like I'll be like, okay, like God, like because that God's my higher power. And I'll say, okay, God, like you can have my sobriety and like you can take care of my addiction, but like I'm going to control everything else.
Yep.
And instead of like inviting my higher power in to like help me with other things, I just like completely like shut him off. And then things start going like awry in my life and I'm like, well, why are they going awry? And my sponsor's like, it's because you didn't invite your higher power in to help you with anything, you know? And so then that's when I start to see like my spiritual connection like decline.
Right, because you're not relying on God anymore to lead you in the right direction. You're trying to control things.
Yeah.
Right.
And that's when I fuck up. Because if I try to control my life, I run my life into the ground. Is what happens with me.
Totally. I think that's what for everybody.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is
Definitely.
that you know, when you stop, and it doesn't matter what your higher power is, but if you stop relying on your higher power, things go to shit.
Yeah.
Quickly.
It's funny because kind of like I said before, it's like these are like things that like when you first get sober, like they tell you, you know, and it's like these are things that like I've told sponsees and that like I've said at H&I's and like that like I wholeheartedly like fully believe it. And then I realized that a couple months later that like even though I've been saying it, like I'm not doing it myself, you know, and
well, it's easier to preach it.
Yeah, it's easier said than done,
Right.
definitely. But I think I need to stop getting down on myself and being like, okay, well, I'm over a year and a half sober. Like, I shouldn't be like this anymore. I feel like I need to realize that, like, okay, sobriety, like,
It's a process.
and emotional sobriety, it's a process and, like, it's a lifelong thing.
Absolutely.
Like, it's not just something you're going to wake up one day and just, like, automatically be better and, like, recovered and, like, whatever. It's like you have to work on it every single day. And I'm very hard on myself about things.
Yeah.
You know, and
yes, very.
I'm like, I'm almost 2 years sober. Like, I should be able to speak like eloquently at meetings and like know exactly what to say. And like, if a sponsee comes up to me, like I need to like know exactly what to say to like save them and make them better. And it's like, that's not true.
Right.
You know, and I know that. It just like, I have to like work on like accepting that.
Implementing it too.
Yeah.
And having those boundaries.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, I think it's important too that, you know, you have it in your head that certain people, they're in recovery and they've got all their shit together. Like, I'm sure you think I have all my shit together. And I'll be the first to tell you, no, I do not. I mean, that's why I'm still in therapy myself. But you have to find the balance of, okay, I can accept that I'm exactly where I need to be right now.
I know. That's my thing too, is I am very, very bad at just like living in the moment.
I know.
Like, I'm very bad. Like, even like example, like school, right? Like, all my friends graduated in May. So I'm like, I should be done by now. Like, I need to get done out of school as quick as I can, get my degree, get a career, have to be off my parents' insurance by the time I'm 26. Like, you know, and I always feel like I need to be in different places, and I never feel comfortable like with where I'm at. And I always feel like I should be somewhere better or like somewhere different. And then I just get hard on myself again, because I'm like, well, if I wouldn't have like fucked up for 2.5 years and like had to go to treatment and like all this, like I'd be graduated by now. And then I just like get down on myself because of it.
But what do I keep telling you about that?
Well, I know like everything happens for a reason.
Right. And you're going through all of this for what?
Like right now.
Why have you had to go through all of this trauma and stress in your life? Yeah, no, that's the right answer. You don't know yet, right? Because you're still a work in progress. Yeah. And I think, you know, for me, a month ago, you know, I'm just like you. I'm very hard on myself too.
Yeah.
And I beat myself up, and I'm like, okay, why did I have to go through all this? And I go through periods of being angry at God, which is now what you have experienced as well.
Yeah.
But what comes of that is you finally get to the other side, and you're able to process all of it and look back and go, okay, God needed for me to go through that in order to get here.
And that's the thing, is I know that, like, and this is another example of like, I say all this shit or whatever, right? Like, I always say, like, I believe everything happens for a reason, like wholeheartedly believe everything always works out the exact way it's supposed to work out. Like, everything always has a reason behind why it happens. And then it's like situations will happen, and I'm like, okay, well, what the hell? Like, where's the reason? Like, why did this happen? And like, I feel like I try so hard to like figure out what the reason is, that like I can't even just be like content with like what's going on and like what's happening,
which is the definition
right
of faith, right?
Yeah.
I'll just let you sit with that for a second.
I know.
And that is why, again, that's another aspect of you trying to control.
I know.
And God is trying to teach you, look, you're not in control.
I know. I don't like that, though.
I don't either. But guess what? He will continue to teach you until you get it.
I know. I hate that, though. Because in my mind, I'm like, okay, well, like, let's say, like, I want to get into college, right? Like, I have to write the application. Like, I have to do the essay. Like, I'm the one that sends it in. So, like, really, at the end of the day, like, I'm in control. Right? And then it's like, I was talking to my sponsor the other night, and she was like, okay, yeah, you do the footwork. But, like, what happens... Like, what ends up happening is not your decision.
That's correct.
Like, it's not your choice,
right.
You know? And when I try to control everything, I then get super stressed, and then I get really overwhelmed, and then I just shut down. And I have a million things that I've just like opened up to have to do, and then I shut down, and then I don't do any of them.
Right. Which that leads me to the next point of, okay, you are in school right now and you're double majoring in
neuroscience and psychology.
Right. And that double major is very hard.
Yeah.
Right? So why are you doing that?
When I went to Etherhealth and I met the neuropsych doctor there, it's just like the way he was with his patients and like the psych evaluations and things he was doing on everyone, like I loved that. I fell in love with that. And so
why?
Just because so many times, like, I've been to a doctor's appointment and, like, I've walked in, like, the first time I ever got put on Lexapro, I walked into that doctor's appointment, I was in there for not even 5 minutes, and he put me on Lexapro, and I ended up in the psychiatric hospital because of it, you know. And the way that the way that Dr. Mossimo did his work was, it was like a 2.5 hour, sometimes 3.5 hour psych evaluation, where he went over everything, like your cognitive abilities, like everything, and like you really got to like see and like understand like the root of that person. And I always felt like, why can't all doctors' visits be like this? Like, why can't you walk into a psychiatrist's office and have this done and then get put on medication? Like, not just walk in and be like, I've been feeling crazy for the past few days, let me get an antidepressant, you know? And so
let me ask you something, because this is going to be good if you let it be. Okay. So that's what you want to do career-wise, most likely. Is what your goal is right now anyway. Okay. So how would you have ever figured that out if you had not gone through everything you did?
I know it's a blessing and it's a curse, because when I was at SDSU and I was an oceanography major, like, yeah, I liked it, but I was like, I always wanted a job where I could wake up every day and be happy. And like always, since I was a little kid, I always said, like, I want to do something to help people. Like, I don't know if I'm helping animals or people or whatever, but like, I just want to help. And then when I had to move home from SDSU, like, I thought my life was over, you know, like I was like miserable because I was away from all my friends. And like, I just thought that life was pretty much over. And then I went to treatment and met Dr. Mossimo, and it just like, it had finally clicked for me that like, this is what I want to do, you know? And so when I do like get down on myself, like, I do try to remember that, like, if it hadn't been for me having to go to treatment and like having to move back to Dallas, like, I probably wouldn't be where I am right now doing what I'm doing, you know? And
I want you to continue to remind yourself of that every time you're being hard on yourself about, well, oh, I messed up again, and oh, I should have done this and I should have done that, and because I didn't, now I'm here. Well, again, you were supposed to go through all of that for a reason.
I know. It's just so hard when you're in the moment sometimes to find the reason.
Oh, totally. I get it. It doesn't make it any easier.
I know.
But I want you to remind yourself of that in these seasons, because these seasons will continue to happen.
I know.
Is that, okay, yes, this sucks. I don't like what I'm going through right now, but it's for a reason. I don't know what that reason is right now, but it will eventually come out.
Well, and when that reason like does finally click, it's like,
it's amazing, right?
It's the coolest feeling in the world.
It's like you get chills because you're like, oh, there you are, God.
Yeah.
Well, I'm super proud of you, as always. And I want to work up to getting back to EMDR at some point.
I know. There'll be these days in my mind where I'm like, no, never again. And then there's days where I'm like, okay, I feel like I'm in a good place, right? And I don't want to like just compartmentalize everything and put everything away, because like I don't want to have to wake up in a week and like feel shitty again.
Right.
Like when I think about that feeling, like it's just so miserable. And you know, remember I had to get those like epidural injections for my back, and they put me on fentanyl and Versed for it to like sedate me, and I was like nervous. Like I wasn't really acting nervous, but like I was nervous for it.
I knew you were, because I was like, this is kind of a big deal. And you were like, well, I didn't even think about that until you said it. Thanks, Ashley. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, but I think you got to kind of think about this.
I know.
This is a big deal.
But so like after the injections, like I was kind of like loopy for a little bit, and I like sobered up and like woke up the next morning, and like all I've been thinking about for the past like 2 weeks since I got them, I'm like, oh my God, I hate that feeling. I'm like,
good.
I'm like, I used to
God.
love like Xanax and benzos, right? And like that was my favorite thing in my addiction. And then I got those injections, and like I was like high or whatever, like on the Versed, and like I was like, oh, I hate that feeling. Like I never want to feel like that ever again. Right. And so when things like this happen, like I have to like remind myself, like if I wasn't in a good place, like if I wasn't doing something right, like I wouldn't feel that way. Like I would have probably gone back out.
You're absolutely right.
You know?
Yeah. Good for you.
On that note.
Wow.
Wow. Yeah. That's very amazing.
I feel like I learned a lot just watching.
Yeah, right. Thank you guys so much
Absolutely.
for doing that.
That was so
That's
brave.
I know.
Very brave.
On both of you.
On
I
both
mean,
of
that's
you.
amazing.
This part is easy. It's
Is
easy
it?
being on this end. It's not on her end. I know when I'm the client, it's like,
Yeah, but she's
So.
the best.
I think it's just amazing how honest you are
Yes.
all the time. I think it's
Yep.
going to save you forever.
We have said that from the very beginning.
Beginning.
I've told you this.
I mean, you have to be like, if
Yeah.
you want to get
Yeah.
sober, if you want to be better, you have to be, you know.
Yeah.
And like sometimes it really sucks. Like it's not fun.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's what keeps me in the position that I'm in today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank
well, and
God.
even when you do try to be dishonest, like you've come into the office a couple of times and tried to spin me some bullshit, and I'm like, that doesn't even sound.
Yeah.
You're no.
It's very easy to tell.
Yeah, she is not
good,
even
though.
good even when she tries.
Not anymore, no.
No,
I'm so used to being sober now. I'm not a good liar
I know.
anymore.
That's a good thing.
Good thing.
That's awesome. Ashley, could you please give us your social media handles and everything if someone wants to get in touch with you, please?
So Instagram is Ashnacook, ASHNICOOK. So my cell is 903-363-6516, and my office is located in Southlake, Texas. Compassionate Solutions. You can Google it, or it's on Facebook as well.
And it's linked to the podcast, I think.
Yes, I link all your information. So if anyone wants to reach out to you, that would be great. And if I think that if anyone wants to reach out to Nicolette, give us your information.
My Facebook is just Nicolette Pianelli. My Instagram is Nicolette Pianelli, I'm pretty sure.
It's really easy.
Yeah, it's just my full name.
Okay. Well, thank you, everyone. Thank you guys so much.
Thank you so
That
much.
was very
Yeah.
enlightening. Thank you.
Thank you for having us back.
Yeah,
Thank you.
you.